Welcome back, in-game community. It's Chris, and I need your help. So many players went absolutely missing in Week 17 in Championship Week. We are putting out an all-points bulletin, missing persons report on these players. If you can help us, if you have any information leading to where these players might be, please let us know. I'm going to start with Derrick Henry. And I know, Derrick Henry didn't play in Week 17. How can he be a missing persons? Because he missed Week 17 even though he was healthy. The Titans had nothing to play for, so they benched Derrick Henry, the guy who carried you all season long, and then when you needed him most, decided to take the week off because, hey, it was a meaningless game. I know it's not Derrick Henry's fault. They told him to rest, but still, this is the most missing persons report of all missing persons because he literally no-showed in the championship, so get on the milk carton, Derrick Henry. All right, next up, a running back who did play in Week 17, but didn't seem like it was Saquon Barkley. The Giants dropped 38 points, and Saquon Barkley had 0 touchdowns, 7 PPR points. Just a really frustrating game watching Daniel Jones rush for not 1, but 2 touchdowns, and they weren't even like the QB sneaks. They were from far out. Just a really frustrating game, but again, if you've seen them, let me know. Get on the milk carton, Saquon. Up next, we got Dalvin Cook, who was supposed to smash in the fantasy playoffs because he had 3 great matchups and he was not very good. 2 weeks in a row not being very good. Completely let you down in the Week 17, matchup, as all the Vikings really did in that matchup against Green Bay. Yeah, Dalvin Cook disappeared when you need him most, and you know what that means? He's on the milk carton. All right, let's keep the fun going with Ramondre Stevenson. At one point, looked like an absolute league-winning, no doubt, have to start, is just going to carry you to a championship. And then Week 16 and 17 happened. Week 17, Damian Harris came back, stole a lot of his thunder, stole a lot of his touches, did almost nothing for your fantasy team, except maybe cost you the championship. So Ramondre Stevenson, you're on the milk carton. Playoff Lenny was not Playoff Lenny for your playoff teams. I mean, I guess he was good in Week 16, but in Week 17, completely disappeared. No signs of Leonard Fournette anywhere in the fantasy community. If you know where he's at, let us know. In the meantime, you can find him on the milk carton. And then outside of like 3 or 4 games, Alvin Kamara was missing for almost the entire season. Really a down year for Alvin Kamara. Now goes into 2023 with a lot of uncertainty, maybe a suspension, maybe a new team. Getting up there in age. Can't feel good about Alvin Kamara. Absolutely disappeared when you needed him most and disappeared for a lot of the season. And that can only mean one thing. He's on the carton. And then this one makes no sense. It's Miles Sanders. You're in a game against a Saints offense that can't score points. All you have to do is win this game, and you've got the number 1 seed locked up. You've got home field locked up. You don't have to roll out Jalen Hurts, and you give Miles Sanders 2 carries in the first half. He barely touches the ball. And this is weeks of this. We've seen this now with Miles Sanders. Completely has disappeared for your fantasy team. Let us know if you've seen him, if you have any information to where we can find Miles Sanders. But in the meantime, he's on the milk carton. And then finally for running backs, David Montgomery in a great spot against the Lions defense that looked like it was once again really bad against the run. Completely shut down David Montgomery. Really shut down the entire Bears offense, to be honest. David Montgomery, now again, kind of like Alvin Kamara, going to be a free agent next year. Who knows what his future looks like, but his present looks like this. All right, let's move on to wide receiver, and of course, Justin Jefferson, the fantasy MVP, the guy that was competing to be the real-life MVP, lost you your fantasy championship. He was the MVP of your opponent because he went out there and did nothing. 1 catch for 15 yards, got absolutely shut down by this Green Bay defense. Look, if you've seen the Justin Jefferson that we got for weeks 1 through 16, please let us know. And if you don't know what he looks like this guy on the milk carton right here. And then Jalen Waddle also got shut down, but not by the defense, by his quarterback play, because the game started with Teddy Bridgewater, and then he got hurt, and then he had to have Skylar Thompson. Skylar Thompson throwing more passes to Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson than Jalen Waddle. What is up with that? Yeah, Jalen Waddle let you down, and now he finds himself on the milk carton. And then bring out the pitchforks, but it's true. Amon-Ra St. Brown let you down, not only in Week 17, but really the whole entire fantasy playoffs. I mean, didn't even go over 15 fantasy points in any game in the fantasy playoffs. Only 10 points here in the final game, even though they were at home and they dominated this game and they were playing the Bears. It didn't matter. He did nothing. He'll be better next year, don't worry. But in week 17, he let you down. If you've seen him, let us know. But for now, he's on the milk carton. And then this was a big bust, and that was DK Metcalf, because he got the Sauce Gardner treatment and the Reed treatment on the other side. These Jets corners are for real. Jets have one of the best secondaries. You got to be feeling good about this Jets defense going into next season. Not feeling too good if you had DK Metcalf, though, because he gave you almost nothing, barely more than zero. DK Metcalf on the carton. And I talk about Jalen Waddle having bad QB play. So did Terry McLaurin, because he got stuck with Carson Wentz again. And we've seen it this year with Carson Wentz. He was awful, and he was awful again in week 17 with Carson Wentz. When you needed him most, he completely vanished, disappeared, no sign of him at all, except on this milk carton. And then a guy who disappeared a lot this season, but also showed out some weeks, was Christian Kirk, and he picked the worst week to disappear, week 17 in your finals matchup. The Jaguars just ran all over Houston. They had a defensive touchdown. They just didn't have to throw the ball in this game. But still, you were hoping for more from Christian Kirk. Just goes to show you, just because a guy gets paid a ton of money doesn't mean he's going to be a fantasy stud, but he may end up on the milk carton. And then it doesn't look like Mike White is the answer for Garrett Wilson, because against Seattle, barely got anything, barely was involved. Mike White looking like Mike White again, and I don't mean the Mike White that everybody loves. I'm talking about the Mike White that is barely a backup quarterback in the NFL. Look, Garrett Wilson's a great player. Better days are ahead for Garrett Wilson, but in week 17, that wasn't one of those days. For this week at least, he's on the milk carton. And then another receiver, kind of like Christian Kirk, he can boom, he can bust, and he's had some booms and he's had some busts, and he busted in week 17, and that was Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, we knew it was a tough matchup, but he did pretty well the last time they played Denver. Not so much this week when you really needed him. Juju, another guy heading into free agency again. Maybe he'll be back with the Chiefs. Maybe he'll be somewhere else. But for this week, he's on the milk carton. All right, on to tight end. And if you picked up Evan Ingram a few weeks ago, you thought you won the tight end lottery. You had a league-winning tight end until you didn't in week 17. And again, kind of like what I talked about with Christian Kirk, they just didn't need to throw the ball. They barely threw it. Etienne had a huge run. Hasty had a touchdown. They had a defensive touchdown. Just wasn't a lot here for the pass catchers. Unfortunately, Evan Ingram let you down at the worst possible time. If you have any information leading to the whereabouts of Evan Ingram, please let us know. But for now, he's on the milk carton. And then Dallas Goedert was a stud all year long. Unfortunately, landed on IR, but then came back on IR just in time to save your fantasy playoffs, or so you thought. Really didn't. I mean, he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't very good either. Dallas Goedert kind of went MIA down the stretch, unfortunately. So he's got to be on the milk carton. And then finally with quarterbacks, I was saying, I'm a little nervous about Kirk Cousins this week on the road in Green Bay. But even I did not think Kirk Cousins would be this bad. He somehow turned Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the NFL, into a milk carton guy. And you know who else he turned into a milk carton guy? Himself, because there he is. And then I got to put Trevor Lawrence on here. But look, Trevor Lawrence looks the part of an elite real-life QB. He looks the part of absolutely the number one overall pick. But like I said with the other guys, he just didn't have to do anything in this game. Etienne had that huge run. They got a defensive touchdown. They didn't need to throw the ball. They were blowing them out. They sat their starters in like the fourth quarter. So, unfortunately, Trevor Lawrence was great for your fantasy team this year. Had a huge second half. Looks like he's going to be one of the elite quarterbacks next year. But in week 17, he's on a milk carton. All right, so again, if you have any information about any of these players, please let us know down in the comments. And don't forget, we still got you covered in week 18 here. Start sits for running back, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, everything you need if you're still playing. And we'll be here all off season long. Check out our week 18 playlist right here.